Hello and welcome to Blockchain Leaders Insights, brought to you by Blockchain Ireland. My name is Lory Kehoe. I am the chair of Blockchain Ireland, and today I'm happy to say I'm joined by my co-host Alejandro Gutierrez. Alejandro?
Thank you very much, Lory. Really happy to be here. My name is Alejandro Gutierrez. I am part of the steering group of Blockchain Ireland, and I could share the startups and Web3 group with Fiona. A little bit about me. Started in the space in 2017. I had co-founded multiple companies like Console Freight, Defactor, and Defactor Labs. And it's been a fantastic experience actually to be in Ireland for the last 6.5 years, helping the ecosystem and trying to actually help the whole world of Web3 succeed in this space.
Super. Thank you very much, Alejandro. So for today's episode, really what we're focusing on, we're looking at global players that are helping shape the crypto, blockchain and Web3 industry here in Ireland. I'm very proud to have Mr. Karl Long, who is the General Manager of Binance with us. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Lory and Alejandro. Delighted to be here. At Binance, we're big fans of Blockchain Ireland, and we really appreciate the work you do to promote blockchain within the island and further afield. Really understand the effort that goes into that. So delighted to be here and looking forward to today's discussion.
Super. Thank you very much. So look, first things first, just to get to know you a little bit better. We'd love to know, I guess, your background, but also how you came to join Binance and why you chose to join Binance.
Well, I've worked in the financial services industry, the more traditional side of it for 25 years at large regulated institutions like State Street and Deutsche Bank, and then at some smaller boutique investment managers like Frontpoint and Wisdom Tree. And I've seen changes in those industries that I think probably you'll start to see in the virtual assets industry. And what I'm talking about there is the growth from more of being a startup to more of an institutionalized industry. I think that's one thing we're going to see over time here with crypto, and I thought this would be an interesting time to get involved with it. But how I actually made the steps to get into it, well, during my time at State Street, I serviced some of the leading global macro funds, and as they started to succeed, they looked, and their assets under management grew, they started to look to diversify into other investment areas, and one of them was virtual assets. So I was involved in setting up the operational infrastructure and servicing them. And it kind of piqued my curiosity because I started to see certain benefits in blockchain that could be applied to the daily, operational pain points that I was experiencing. And it's not just what I was particularly experiencing. Every type of large investment bank or brokerage house that is involved in securities and security settlements deals with these pains every day, and things like discrepancies on trades, reconciliations, payments and transfers that don't work smoothly. All this requires a huge amount of operational effort. Thousands of people working in back offices dealing with kind of low satisfactory work. And if you brought blockchain technology to it, I could see that you brought one source of truth, you removed all those reconciliations, payments could happen a lot faster, you weren't confined to business hours of actually making transfers, you could do it 24/7. So all of these things kind of attracted me into the space. And then I decided to make the jump full-time into crypto, and that's how I ended up at Binance.
Great. One of the things, and I've spent some time working in that area as well, is that there's definitely advantage that I see, that, and very similar to what you said, but we're probably not seeing a level of adoption of the technology at an institutional level, at say that kind of back and middle office perspective, as fast as I would have thought. Why do you think that's the case?
I think in the past, you didn't have to do it. And what I mean why you didn't have to do it was you could always bring extra labor to it. So if you look at traditional financial services, in the 70s, was probably the back office work was done in New York, and then it moved to Ireland, to Poland, and then out to India. So you're always bringing a cheaper labor unit cost to the problem. But there is no more Indias. You have to start to look at another solution, and that solution is a different technology rails. Blockchain is that solution to make it more efficient rather than just adding an extra body to the task. But you are starting. I know you. I totally agree with you, Lory. It has been much slower than I would have thought. But I think with technology, people underestimate, what it's going to do today, and then kind of miss what it's going to do over the next decade or so. But you're starting to see some of the large exchanges and big settlement houses adopt this. Like the likes of London Stock Exchange has, built a specific team and applied a budget to it, so I can see things possibly going to happen there. And then the major settlement center in the US, DTCC, they have a parallel blockchain infrastructure in place, copying everything that happens in the traditional world. So they're certainly testing and working out how it'll happen. So you can see things happening there, but I think there is motivation here and now today where there wasn't in the past. And I mean, what you need, certainly with banking, it has to be about financial motivation. So the likes of the big trading firms, like your Citadels or Susquehannas, etc., they're looking to trade more and settle more quickly. When you settle quickly, you reduce risk because everybody understands what their position is within minutes, and you can get that with blockchain. You could probably trade more because things are settling much quicker. So they have a financial incentive to do it. And then some of the big custodians, like the State Streets, the Bank of New York, etc., that I worked for in the past, properly through blockchain, they can reduce some of that operational spend, but and reduce low-grade work. People are not satisfied by doing reconciliations on a daily basis. So if you can, kind of shift away from some of that manual work to some more high-level value-add work, that's something that everybody would welcome. So there's a financial gain for different sides of the industry. And I think that'll be a motivating factor that will probably move us now and get some traction into this migration.
Great. And I'll come back to that later on when we start talking a little bit more about Ireland, but that could be an opportunity for Ireland in that space to, I guess, show that what we can do. But let me come back to it. Anyway, enough of me. Alejandro.
Yeah. So, Karl, I would like to ask you actually about your role in Binance and what is the day-to-day of that role?
Yeah, so I'm the general manager of Binance Ireland, so I'm responsible for oversight and the administrative side of the Binance entities that we have in Ireland now. And it's also oversight of our team here. So we have about 20 people working in Ireland across some diverse disciplines such as software development, compliance, finance, university outreach, global events management. So it's working with them and overseeing some of the work that they do. But a lot of my time is actually spent using the experience that I've gained in investment management and operations, and that's been applied to stablecoins. So I spent a lot of my time looking at stablecoin projects, assessing whether the products are good, trying to bring them to market, looking at the upcoming regulations that are coming for stablecoins, which is kind of the introduction of MiCA, and we can probably talk about it later because I think that's one of the most interesting things coming towards us in the next 18 to 2 years. So a lot of my work would be spent on the stablecoin rollouts across Europe. So that's kind of sums it up. Bit of administration and oversight, working with the teams, trying to fix any of the local problems we may have. And then the stablecoin work. And just to sum it up, I think Binance is in Ireland, but a lot of the work we do here is very much, global focused, at global projects. And I think it keeps all the team pretty excited. Yeah.
So you're focused on retail and institutional then?
It's retail and institutional, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you mentioned something really interesting there, right? That a lot of the time that you are spending is using those concepts or that experience that you gain in your traditional or working for traditional financial suppliers. So how do you believe, right? How do you think that experience has shaped for you to come into this new technology and understanding in a way better manner of how have you been applying those concepts into these new...
Yeah, I think it's that experience has kind of helped me to understand the direction of travel here. As I said, I worked in hedge funds in the early 2000s, and that was a startup really niche industry, and that grew to be institutionalized and more regulated. And I think that's what my experience is at the likes of the big institutions. That's how it kind of contributes. I understand possibly where we're going, and I've always been quite vocal within our own business and when dealing with other peers to say, look, I think that we will see a much more regulated space, and we clearly will with MiCA, and that there will be a maturing of the industry. And I think the more as every day goes by, people think appreciate that more, that there will be a maturing coming, and I think that's welcomed. So yeah, this experience is definitely helped me understand, I think, where we're going.
So when you switched over from TradFi to Binance, what did your friends and your family say? It's like, who are Binance, or what are you thinking? Or
I think there's definitely, it depends which age group you're talking to, right? So some people go, oh yeah, it's something they're very familiar with, and they can see that this is it's a really modern and it is the future. And then other people possibly don't even understand what crypto and blockchain is. So it was mixed. But I think that's once you get into one of these roles, I think one of your responsibilities is educating people what it's about, what are the benefits, what are the risks, what are the challenging things we're going to have to deal with over the next few years. So it was mixed, but I think people look at it and go, yeah, that's a really interesting challenge. Like, you go for it.
Fantastic. So, look, last year was a tumultuous year, right, for the whole ecosystem. There were so many things happening, and Binance actually was on the news at the end of November, right, with the settlement with the DOJ, but also CC stepping out of the CEO role for Binance, and being CC, that is one of the main characters, right, in the whole crypto space. So there was a lot of changes, right? So from that perspective, I'd like to ask you, what is your view actually on those changes, and how do you guys feel like those changes internally in Binance?
Well, I think it was a difficult and challenging year for the company. But I think it was important that we, acknowledge that there was mistakes made in the past, and that we take responsibility as a company for those mistakes, and that's what we've done. It was. I think when I look at it, I think it's an opportunity to turn the page. We spent a lot of money over the past 2 years on compliance, in the past year, we spent over $200 million on compliance, which was like a 35% increase on the previous year. So even though last year was an acknowledgement, I think it's important that the company had already taken a significant shift towards being compliance focused over the previous 2 years. So yes, it was a difficult year, but it was important that it actually happened. But when I look back on it, I think there are some really encouraging things that came out of it. Like when we began the year, we had 128 million users, and when we finished the year, there was 170 million users, and that's I think that's really it's a humbling, and we really appreciate the faith and trust that our users have in Binance, and that's something that we look back at really positively on 2023. So yeah, it was, as you said, it was a pivotal moment. CZ stepped down, but we have brought in Richard Teng, a CEO who's got a regulatory background, a great deal of experience, really well regarded in the industry. So I think there's a lot to look forward to and to be encouraged by for 2024.
So, like, taking into consideration, right, that growth, you're saying like Binance is by far the largest exchange at the moment, right? So where does Binance go from here?
Yeah, well, I think there's three things we're going to focus on this year. One of them is to continue to be a user-focused company. That's, I think, the main factor that contributed to the success of Binance, is being always very, very focused on the user and trying to do our best by them. What I mean by that is, bring them great products and deliver those products with really high quality service levels. So that'll be one of the key pillars for 24. And then secondly, we want to work more with regulators. And Richard has been very, very vocal on that. And I think this year is a great opportunity in Europe with MiCA coming. There's clear guidelines and transparency around what's required. So we're going to work very, very, very hard on that over the next year, and that's not just in Europe but globally. And we continue to add to the compliance resources that I spoke about earlier in the conversation. And then lastly, we want to grow crypto adoption. If you look at our product as an industry, it's got a 5% market penetration statistic, which if you look at any product or even financial services products is very low. So we need to grow that. We need to bring the crypto message to more users, and we're going to do that through strategic partners. And I think you'll see that evidenced across 24 as the year goes by. So that'll be a key thing to actually spread the message more wider. Yeah.
And that's a fantastic point, right? Because when you see it like a adoption and you understand where jurisdictions are getting a faster adoption of these crypto services are definitely the ones that have a real need, like South America, for example. Like, Binance, it has a huge penetration, let's say in Venezuela, where most of the financial transactions actually are happening with Binance as a base for exchange between people, right? And payments in stores are components like that. So do you have any view on what are the next jurisdictions that are going to just get that adoption or that growth, or how actually can we create a similar effect in Europe?
I think in Europe, when you have really clear regulation and people see the oversight that's involved in crypto and the maturing of the industry, I feel that will bring the adoption, right? You're moving it away from that 5% to more mainstream. So I think you will see more adoption there. Certainly, there's going to be change. It's going to be a challenging 2 years for the industry to adopt to these stringent high standards, but it's something we have to do if we want to grow, if we want to bring it to a wider market. This is the things we're going to need to do, and it's something that's happening in financial services. Wider adoption brings greater requirements, and that makes sense for everybody.
Yeah. And Alejandro, what about in Colombia? What's the state of crypto adoption there?
It's interesting. Yeah, it is growing, not as fast as in the other countries in South America, and the reason behind that is because the Colombian peso is extremely strong at the moment against dollar. So it's the reverse case as what happens, for example, in Argentina, when everybody's just crazy at the moment of, okay, how I can just get Argentinian pesos converted into dollars and keep them in that stable coin. However, from the fintech perspective, there is a lot of revolution happening in Colombia at the moment. There are a lot of new companies bringing solutions that potentially are not going to be as implemented in Colombia directly, but in some other places in South America, Latin America are going to be. From the hub perspective, Colombia is one of the largest hubs from the fintech side. And I think that line between a DeFi solutions or CeFi solutions and fintech is getting blurrier by the second, right? I think at the end of the day, it's going to be just fintech and that's extent. So
that the blur is the interesting thing, isn't it? And that's kind of the institutionalization. There's technology happens in a niche space, and then people are attracted to it, see the benefits, and then merge. And that happens in all technology. So it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves.
For 2024, we'd love to know what you're excited about and what you think are the hot topics and what they're going to be.
Oh, well, 2024 is definitely going to be an interesting year. But before I start, this is not investor advice and I'm not an advisor, but there's certain things that are coming or have just come that will definitely have an effect throughout the year. So the first thing that I can see is, the Bitcoin halving is coming in April, and that will bring a reduction in supply of Bitcoin to the market. That's been telegraphed, but I think what makes it more interesting is that there's an offsetting effect with the recent approval of the Bitcoin ETF in the US, which possibly brings an increase in demand. So as you see the supply coming down and the demand going up, that could have a very interesting effect throughout the year. Like you've seen in the past, the adoption of the gold ETF, when that probably started a little bit slowly, but over the decade, and for example, just one ETF, the Spider ETF, grew to 72 billion. So slow growth, but definitely ramped up, and that was just one ETF. So I think with the reduction in supply and the increase in demand, that's going to be something that we'll definitely be watching throughout the year. And then something that's definitely interesting to me, and sometimes people don't find it as interesting, is the increase in regulation that's coming. That's going to be, a seismic event in Europe for the crypto industry. We'll start to see the effects of that with the stablecoin regulations that are coming in July, and then as we progress over the next year or so, we'll see it affecting virtual asset service providers in a wider context. So that will bring, a maturity to the industry. It will definitely prove challenging in terms of bringing resources to it. But on the offset of that, I think it's going to definitely increase the profile of the industry and hopefully bring it to a wider audience. So those three things are definitely things worth watching. And then lastly, and this is not my sphere of expertise, but half the world's population is going to go to the polls this year, and it's going to be exciting, and probably gets a hell of a lot more exciting as we get towards November in the US. So clearly going to be a huge year of interesting things that that are already on the book to look at. But with crypto, you never know what's coming next, right? So yeah, definitely going to be an interesting year.
Ethereum ETFs, maybe.
Well, I think you have to, right? You saw, you just spoke about the gold ETF, but you can get platinum ETFs, silver ETFs, etc. So yeah, I think there's definitely probably market demand for that too, right? So I could definitely see that. Yeah.
You just mentioned there, to go back in relation to the gold ETF, I think that came out. How did gold then perform, or how did that ETF perform after?
Well, in terms of growth, right? I think it grew from pretty much 0 to 72 billion. Now that's just one ETF. That's the Spider ETF, which is the main one. That went to 0 to 72 billion over the decade. So that gives you an idea. And there's numerous ETFs out there in gold, and they're in the tens of billions. So you would think, as Bitcoin has been described as digital gold, that there is going to be something similar there. I can see a large amount of demand, but there's lots of things can happen between now and 10 years time from here.
You already mentioned this earlier in the podcast, but it is usually when this type of technologies, or when you have these breakthrough moments, usually we tend to overestimate the now and underestimate the impact that will have in the future, right? And I think people were thinking that the adoption of these spot ETFs are going to be in the billions within the first week, which is ludicrous. That's not going to happen, right? And I was reading a few tweets about what the realistic adoption could be in the first month, and the expectation is to have something between 250 million to 500 million, and that's the extent, right?
Yeah,
I haven't checked actually how it is performing at the moment, but that's probably a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, well, I haven't checked what it is either, but when I looked at the gold ETF, it was very much like a slow ramp up, and then much more of a steeper curve as it matured. And I think that's kind of human nature, isn't it? People, these are early investors. People gain trust when they see more people invested. The market cap goes up, and that brings in more users as it probably commands more media, more research on it, more opinion, more talk. That brings in more users. So probably be similar, but who knows?
Like I guess I think the really interesting point you said there is that folks have to remember that that's just one ETF that you referenced there that was 70 billion, just one. So if we look at the spot Bitcoin ETFs, there are 11. The stat that I saw after 24 hours was that 4 billion had gone in across
4 billion
had gone in across the 11 in 24 hours. So just I think the 72 billion for one ETF is a huge figure, but how many gold ETFs are there? Are there 50?
There probably is 50, but there is a small number of substantial ones.
Sure.
Yeah, like everything, right?
Yeah.
People go towards the liquidity and the major players. So I would see probably something similar here. And one interesting thing about the launch of those ETFs was in the last few days, everybody really cut their fees to competitive levels.
Yeah.
So that probably will attract more users in too, and that's encouraging.
Yep, 100%.
So, Karl, going back into 2024, right? So we chat about your view out of 24 and what you reckon is going to happen. What is the lined up for Binance in Ireland?
Well, in Ireland, what we'll look to do is try expand the team. So where talent becomes available, we'll look to add to it. And we're fortunate, and one of the reasons why Binance is in Ireland, and we discussed this before today's discussion informally, was there is a rich talent pool here, and that talent pool is here because government policy in the past made some really positive decisions about bringing in global financial houses and global tech firms, and they've created a pool of really expert knowledge in niche areas, which you wouldn't possibly get in other European capitals, right? So where we can, we'll hire people in technology, and similarly, with some of the larger banks here, there's really good compliance and finance resources here too. Mm-hmm. So we'll look to add them where we can, to take advantage of the expertise that's in Dublin. So really, what we're looking to do is just continue the path of growing and adding great people to the team.
Fantastic.
From an Ireland Inc. perspective, should Ireland become a global blockchain and crypto and Web3 hub?
Yeah, well, to say a global or Web3 or crypto hub, I think we need to probably progress a little bit carefully. You don't want to go all in on a technology and say we are going to be with a global hub. I think we definitely need to be at the table. We definitely need to be there understanding how the industry is evolving, what are the benefits, who are the major players. I think it's really important that we're there. We have an understanding of what's going on. I think we've been a little bit reluctant to commit to it. We have very good industries here in tech and the big social media companies, etc. here, and Google, etc. And then the banks, the big players here. Probably a little bit spoiled. Maybe we need to just diversify a little bit. Keep our hand in on Web3 and blockchain. And as Alejandro said, and we've mentioned a few times, is it's difficult to understand what's happening over the next 6 months. But when you look back over a decade, you can see these transformative things have happened to society. If you looked at the beginning of the internet, people got super excited. People were blown away buying pets.com and everything, and it was like this was going to the moon, and everything's going to change. And then you hit 2000, 2002, and everybody is just completely disillusioned with it. It's a technology winter. Everything's over. Everything's dead. But you go forward 10 years and 15 years. 7 billion people have smartphones, and you can't live without the internet. So I think you just have to definitely, Lory, just be at the table, observing, promoting where possible, bringing the right players to Ireland, and then and be there. And I think we have to. Yeah, we definitely have to be involved.
Do you reckon that we are somehow at the table at the moment, or what is missing for us to be at the table?
I think we're certainly there with some of the players we are, but I think we probably need to set our stall a bit more. I think we've been a little bit quiet on it, where we wouldn't have been as quiet globally on other technologies and some of the more traditional technologies and some of the more traditional financial services. We're definitely banging a larger drum on those ones. So in Web3, I think, there's room to be a little bit more vocal on it, be a little bit more open for business. And as I said, we don't have to overdo it, but we definitely have to be involved.
And a shameless plug here. So Blockchain Ireland actually published a strategy for Blockchain Ireland, which we presented to Minister Pascal Donoghue back in May of 2022. So people can find that on our LinkedIn page. Feel free to download it. I think a lot of the content is actually still relevant. It was a bottom up and top down piece of research. So we want to make sure we got input from at a grassroots level, but also at a I guess, ministerial and governmental departmental level. We didn't want it to be something that we would simply throw over the fence at the government, but rather worked with them to create that document. So people can check that out. Anyway, over to you, Alejandro.
That's a great point, right? Like, and I believe that from the perspective why we haven't actually just sell these potentially the same way that we have done with some other financial services or even from the tech perspective is probably the lack of regulation, right? I think always has been some sort of hesitation, right? To just bang that drum and say, hey, we can do that in here. And I believe now with MiCA coming in place and that application, that change and will give us that extra boost, right? To be right there.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely, there's much clearer guidelines of what's required from the industry, and with that transparency, I guess everybody knows where they stand, and we can be probably more vocal. Yeah, it's a really positive thing.
Yeah. So going back into that, like for 2024, how do you see Blockchain Ireland working with other institutions that are involved in the space, like the likes of Central Bank of Ireland, let's say the Ministry of Finance, in order to create a thriving ecosystem and actually just push a little bit Ireland into that table, as you mentioned?
Yeah, well, it's going to be a big year and a big 2 years with MiCA, and with the regulations, they're broad. They're covering everything from the technology to the market abuse to the people involved, policies, AML, everything. So there's a very high level regulatory guideline, and then there's technical standards below that to actually get into nitty gritty of how you, on a day-to-day basis, you implement those rules. So with the introduction of the regulation from day one, I think if there's a very clear channel of communication and it's interactive and it happens quickly, that the information is flowing back and forth quickly between the industry and the central bank, not just the Central Bank of Ireland, but any central bank or regulator across Europe, it's important that they communicate quickly and very clearly on how we can implement the day-to-day of these rules. If it's going to go, if the regulation is going to be adopted in a smooth and streamlined way. So I think it's really about communication and clear and the speed of that communication. That's the important thing for me, I think.
So do you believe that Blockchain Ireland can be in a way that translator, let's call it, between regulators and people in the industry that are just deep down?
I would see it as a translator and an aggregator. Because if you're speaking to the Binance or some of the other crypto players in Dublin, it's important that we come together with a voice to say, this is something that we need advice on, or how would you interpret this, so we can all go forward positively. That's the way I would see it.
How, and for those who aren't aware of these points, really, how is Binance supporting the blockchain, crypto, and Web3 ecosystem in Ireland? Yeah,
so we've been here about a year and a half, and we sponsored Blockchain Ireland Week, which we loved. It was such a positive week. It was a great location in Trinity. It was really collegiate and collaborative, super environment. We brought people over from the UK who who were blown away by it. They
Great.
loved it. It was such a positive experience. It's a great week, and we're looking forward to it next year. Our CEO Richard Teng spoke at it. He spoke on the regulatory panel, and I thought that was a really interesting discussion. So we're kind of doing it on a high level there, but we're also doing it on trying to influence blockchain adoption at a grassroots level as well through our university outreach program. So we've spoken at 5 or 6 of the leading universities across Ireland in the last year, where we have workshops and we speak with students about crypto fundamentals, the benefits, the risks, the challenges around crypto, why it came about, and those discussions have been quite robust. Just good bit of academic interrogation of crypto, and we've really enjoyed that. So we'll continue to do that. Both that work both at a high level and at a grassroots level to bring crypto to a wider audience. I think education is really important, so people understand what it's about. That's going to be our focus, I think, for next year.
A question we ask each of our guests is a podcast that you listen to, that you love, and that you would recommend to our listeners.
Yeah. Well, I'm a heavy podcast user.
Okay.
I spend many of my Saturdays on the side of a pitch watching kids football, and podcasts get me through those wet and miserable days. So I listen to a lot, but I think one that I've kind of binge at the moment is The Rest is History. It's they've got huge amount of contents. It can be very geeky, but it's geeky in a really amusing way. It definitely is some laugh out loud moments in there. And the reason why I think it kind of resonates with me is because, like as Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I definitely feel like there's a lot of repeats going on at the moment. Like we're seeing, the Industrial Revolution Part 2. We move from factories to AI. We see huge amounts of migration. That's going to be challenging for societies, and we saw that in the history of the United States and the problems that they had with migration. So it's really interesting. It's fun. There's loads of content on it, so I listen to that a lot. And then I also listen to How I Built This. I think that's very good. It's kind of the heroic journeys of startups, but crypto is still in a startup phase, so it's very interesting to see how other companies adopted and built successful businesses and met challenges. I think that's very good. And then on a macro level, I also listen to David McWilliams. I think he's very good and really on point to some of the the global trends. He wouldn't be the greatest fan of crypto, but I think it's important not to live in an echo chamber, right? So
Yes.
any sort of opposing views are always welcome. So there are 3 podcasts that get me through most weekends. Yeah.
Super. And then in terms of people wanting to follow you, wanting to follow Binance, where are the best places to go?
Well, just in the main social media channels, like you can go to our website, binance.com, which there's a lot of blogs there that are super interesting. There's LinkedIn, X, are good places to start. Yeah.
Super. Well, thank you very much, Karl, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. I think there are 3 key things that I took away from the conversation today. Number 1, the focus on the user and building user products that are easy to use. And we're going to see a lot more from Binance in that regard, and I imagine others too. Number 2, I think, is also in relation to regulation, an area we've discussed before on the podcast, but an area of increased focus this year with the markets and crypto assets regulation coming into force, and also other regulations down the road. And thirdly, I think ultimately the focus of adoption at a retail and at an institutional level. So a big thank you again to Karl for joining us from Binance, and we look forward to seeing and hearing from you on our next podcast. Till next time, thank you.